Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show a lot of different techniques in animating logos and type. A lot of these effects and techniques are applicable for various projects. I have this one here. I'm going to start from the beginning and have it looping. This is just a simple UAB logo animation, obviously not the official logo. But in this, it kind of shows things like masking, track mats, trim paths, 3D layers, motion blur, a lot of stuff going on. So we're going to cover a lot of this, kind of dissect the process in making something like this, and hopefully you can learn some techniques that you might find helpful for your projects. All right, so first off, I have it looping here. And you can see these are the layers that I'm using for this animation. If I turn off and on some of them, you can see this border, and then you have the individual letters. So I'm turning off the U, turning off the A, and the B, and then these layers here that say pre-comp 1, those are the little flying lines that are coming out from behind it. So I know this logo animation is a little bizarre, but it's just a way to show a lot of different stuff going on all at once. All right, a few things in getting started. And you'll notice how the layers here, I haven't covered this in other videos, but they are staggered a little bit. So any layer that you have, you can click and drag it around, as I'm doing now. So keep that in mind. It probably will default to having all the layers start at the beginning of your sequence here, but you can click and drag and move them if you want. In this case, I have these line layers coming through, and then because I wanted them repeated, so they go out and they stop, and they go again, and then they go a third time. So that's these 3 layers here that are staggered after about 2 seconds apart. So yes, you can click, move these around. You can also click on a layer and move it up and down. And this is important. The layers on top, they will look like they are stacked above or overlapped above other layers beneath them. So you can click and drag, move these around as necessary. Also, for those of you that may be familiar with Adobe Premiere or other video editors, the way you split up layers works a little differently than what you may be used to. You actually have to go up to Edit and then Split Layer. The keyboard shortcut is Shift-Command-D for Mac. So if I have this layer selected, I can press Split Layer, and then you see it split these two, this U, the letter U layer. Now I have it here and here, and it is automatically renamed 1 to U2, that's funny. Unexpected, a band reference. So U and U2, I'm gonna Command Z, just in case anyone is not familiar with Command Z or Control Z, that is to undo any action. And then you'll notice on some of these layers that we'll look at a little more in depth later. Like this shape layer 4 has an effect on it. So we'll talk a little bit about effects, putting effects onto layers as well. The U layer, it rotates. You can see it rotating here. It's rotating in 3D space. So I'll show you how to turn on the 3D layers to use those types of rotations as well. And then there's also this reveal of the border That's another effect, another technique we can look at. And then likewise for kind of making something like these flying lines kind of exploding from the background. All right, so let's get started in basically recreating this. So I'm going to go to Composition, New Composition. I'm just going to tell this UAB logo. I'm going to keep it a square composition, 1080 by 1080. And right now it's set to 9 seconds. That's fine. Press OK. Now I'm not going to make it exactly like this one. This one was a little bit nicer. Took a little bit longer as a demo, but for this, I'm going to basically show the same things just in a much more brief way. Okay, so let's get started by making some text. So I have my type tool and draw this out. I'll type in UAB. I know it's not the same typeface, but we're not worried about that now. Okay, so we have a UAB text layer here. And before we get started, I do want to show a few more things you can do specifically with text layers. So with this layer selected, I can toggle down this little arrow here. And then you have the normal transform. I'm going to move this up so we can see it a little better. The transform controls, opacity, rotation, scale, position, all those that we've looked at previously. But you also have this little button here that says animate. So if I click on this, I can also animate these other options. Specifically for text, you have tracking, line spacing, but let's just use tracking right now. So if I click on that, it adds an animator, and then basically you just have tracking amount. And tracking is, sometimes I forget that not everybody here is a graphic designer. Tracking is the space between letters. So if I increase this, you'll notice the space between letters is increasing as well. And just like any other option here, there's a little stopwatch. So that means I can keyframe it. So if I turn on stopwatch by tracking amount, this is the starting point. I'm going to move it forward in time. So over 1 second, I'm going to increase the tracking and it will automatically animate. So from here to here, the tracking increased over time. You also have a bunch of other things here in Animate. For example, let's look at, I'll just look at fill color. So if I go to hue, again, we'll start it at this green, which is not the official UAB green, by the way. And it operates with these degrees. So it's showing you that it's working like a color wheel. So if I turn on the stopwatch, again, move it forward in time, and as I increase the number, it's basically going around the color wheel. So green to blue to purple, red, yellow. Yellow is a little bit muddy because it's a darker value than around to green. So let's say I want it to go to purple. Now, over that 1 second from this keyframe to this keyframe, it is changing color. So there's a lot of different stuff you can do here. I'm going to turn that off. I'm also going to turn off the tracking because we don't need that for this animation. But that's some options that you can animate further different text layers. All right. I'm going to now spin this whole UAB, these all three letters. I know in the example logo, I just had the U spin, but for simplicity, we're just going to spin all three. So this layer, this UAB layer, I'm looking over in these boxes beside it. If you don't see these boxes, there's a lot of options here that are important. If you don't see them, you might have to toggle them off and on with these buttons at the very bottom left. So I can add more stuff, which I don't need these right now. Yours might look like this and doesn't show anything. So just turn on these two buttons. Let's say expand or collapse the layer switches pane or the transfer controls pane. You need both of these on. In this case, we're going to turn this UAB layer into a 3D layer. And look for the little 3D cube symbol. That's to turn on the 3D layer. And then this empty box underneath the 3D cube, I can click and turn it on. And now, if I toggle down the controls, I'm just going to go to transform. In this case, let me turn it off again. So with rotation, without the 3D layer turned on, if I rotate, it's just rotating around in a circle. But now, with the 3D layer on, now we have X rotation, Y rotation, Z rotation. And you can play around with these. So X rotation rotates it around the X axis, so it can look like it's going forward or backwards. And then Y rotation, like it's going around like a helicopter blade or something. And then the Z rotation is normal, like, or what it was before. Now you'll notice it still is rotating around this anchor point, which is right here. So as, in this case, as it spins around, it's spinning around this, what looks like a little circle or sphere right here, right in the center. You can change where that anchor point is, and it will change where the rotation happens and how it happens. So if you go up to, it has two names, the pan behind or the anchor point tool. If I click on that, I can move this around. So let's say, hey, just as an example, I'm going to move it way over here. So now as I rotate this around, you see it's no longer spinning like helicopter blade. Well, I guess it is. It's just now it's spinning around a much wider circumference. Versus, let me also try. So now you can see how it's behaving differently. Oh, you have to. This thing can be very finicky. So it can be a little frustrating. I'm trying to grab it just the right place. You can see it's giving me some issues here. I think that's working better now. There we go. And it's changing. It's kind of, maybe you go for something that looks more like kind of like a swinging sign or something. So this is all you can do, or some of that you can do in with a 3D layer. You'll also notice with position, there's a third value here. So before, you can go left and right and up and down, but now you have this third value that allows you to go forward and backwards, or at least appear to go forward and backward in space. All right, so if I want to animate this, I can, let's do some of the, let's try one of these rotations. I know it's a little wonky right now, but put this back to 0. Yeah, maybe I'll have it kind of like a swinging animation. A lot of people like doing swinging animations. So I'll start with exactly, I guess things are a little bit off, so we'll just eyeball it about right there. And then I know I want to animate the X rotation, so I'm going to turn on the stopwatch. So this is where it starts. Move forward. Now, specifically to get the swinging effect, I could just have it come here and then it just stops. But, that's pretty boring. So I want to do a little bit more. So we want to have that kind of swinging back and forth effect. So instead of it just kind of stopping directly in front of us, we'll actually have it look like it kind of goes forward a bit. Then I'm going to move the playhead further along. Then it'll go backwards. And then I'm going to shorten the distance between each keyframe. So it goes forward a little bit more. I'm just kind of eyeballing this a little bit. And then we'll just end it at 0. So it's going to look a little rough right now, but let's see what we got so far. Okay, it's actually, I was eyeballing it. It actually didn't turn out too bad. So it kind of swings back and forth, but you also notice it's a little choppy. In case I haven't mentioned this before, you can click and drag around these keyframes as much as necessary. These are actually not too bad at the moment, but to get rid of this kind of choppy robotic movement, we need to add easy ease. I'm not sure who came up with that term, but if you select these keyframes, so what I'm doing is I'm clicking and holding down in an empty area, making a selection box, and I'm selecting over all of these keyframes. And then I can right click or control click on one of them. And under keyframe assistant, there's an option for easy ease. The keyboard shortcut is F9. So you can also do F9. I actually have to hold down the function key and then hit F9 on my keyboard. So when you do that, the keyframes no longer look like little diamonds. Now they look like little hourglasses. So let's take a look at the motion now. Much, much smoother. I think, if I'm being really picky, I think some of the back and forth probably gets a little too much here, and so it gets a little fast. Maybe I'll just drag this out. I accidentally had them all selected, and when I tried to drag one, it dragged all of them. So just keep that in mind. If you want to deselect the keyframes, just click anywhere in a blank area. And I'm just gonna drag these out a little bit. Let's just see if that looks a little better. That's actually not too bad. It's kind of that swinging sign effect. All right, so that is something you can do with turning any layer into a 3D layer. All right, let's look at a few other techniques now. Now I'm going to use the rectangle tool here, and actually let me just move the UAB logo over. Let's see the full composition again. Just kind of center it here. I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool. Let's just make a simple rectangle. And you'll notice when I did that, what happened? As I clicked to make a rectangle, the UAB logo or the UAB text went away, and then they started revealing the letters as I made the rectangle over the letters. This is creating a mask. Masking can be very useful for a lot of different effects. In this case, you probably don't want a mask right away. We can look at how you would use masks a little bit later. But in this case, I want to have that green border again. So the reason, if this happens to you, in order to not have that happen, you have to deselect this layer, in this case the UAB layer. Now, when I have this rectangle tool, and I have it, you can make it where the tool creates a shape or a mask, but now it's on, creates a shape. I'm going to turn off the fill color. I'm going to turn on the stroke. Now I'm going to make the border. Okay. So when I did that, it automatically made a new shape layer. If I go to my contents, I have the rectangle in here, path, and then the stroke, which is turned on. You see the eyeball here, it's visible. This is the stroke of this rectangle, and no fill. If I turn on the fill, that's what it would look like. And I can change the color, of course, but right now I do not want a fill turned on. And then you have some options specifically to transform the rectangle, which is different than transforming the shape layer. The way this will come in handy is when you use masks, and I'll show that in a little bit. First off, I want to show on this rectangle where it says add. This is similar to the button where it said animate on the text layers earlier. So if I go to add, in this case I'll do round corners. This gives me an option here that I can change the roundness of this rectangle. We'll just keep it something like this for now. You can also, let's say, add something like trim paths. With trim paths, you can very quickly animate something that looks like a line work going around the text in this case. It can get a little finicky with the start and end point. Let's say we have the animation, so it swings down. Let's actually have the border complete itself before the UAB swinging animation. So this is a good example. I'm going to select the UAB layer. I'm going to click and drag it so it starts later in time. So the beginning is when I'll have the rectangle appear. So I'm using the trim paths because I've clicked on this add button. It's adding an animator on the shape layer. So trim paths, I can just double check. I don't want it to start that way. Let's actually, let me make sure I'm going the right direction. Here we go. You might also have to adjust the offset so you know exactly where it's starting. If you couldn't tell, it gets a little confusing on getting the numbers right. Oh, I see. Okay. Again, I'm doing this video all in one take, so excuse the... There we go. Excuse me figuring this out in real time. Okay, so I'm just going to start it right there. I'm going to animate the end value here. So I'm going to turn on the stopwatch. This is the starting point. Right now we don't see anything. And then after a second, I'm going to move this forward. I'm actually decreasing the number, but it's making the line look like it's going around. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So playing it back. Oh, and when I made that value here, it should be at 0, but it was at 1%. So I'm just going to type in it manually so it completes itself. So let's try that again. There we go. So we have the border animating all the way around to this point. And to make this a little smoother, I'm still going to select these keyframes and then do the easy ease, which it's the function F9, or again, control click or right click on a keyframe and go to keyframe assistant and then click on easy ease. You probably won't notice it too much here, but it will be a little smoother. You can notice it a little bit more specifically at the end. Okay, so it's coming along pretty nicely. Please do save your work as you go. Command S, keyboard shortcut to save, or come to File and click on Save so that you do not lose your work after, if you've been here for a couple hours and then something crashes, you don't want to lose hours of work. All right, so we got this going for us. Let's see what we want to look at now. Okay. Well, actually, I'm going to move both of these layers up because the other effects we want to do, let me see if it's, something happened. Okay, because this was a 3D layer, so just ignore that this is a little off. We'll just have it back here. Okay, I'm going to make a few more demos in the space below, just because this wouldn't be as relevant for this specific logo. I want to show masking now. All right, so I'm going to make a new shape here that I can demonstrate masking. First off, let's use the pen tool to kind of create some sort of interesting shape here. I would kind of make a square heart shape, sure. Keep in mind, when you make this shape layer with the pen tool, if you're still using the pen tool, you can click on any of these vertices, singular vertex, and move them around to adjust the shape at any time. Okay, so we have this new shape layer. I'm actually going to scale it down a little bit, just a little bit too big. We'll increase the stroke size some. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here. Now I'm going to make another bounding box around here. Take the stroke down some. And I want to animate this heart shape revealing itself as it passes over the top edge of the box. So it goes from here, but it's invisible, and then we see it come into the box. Okay. First up, I'm going to add a mask on this shape layer. So I have the layer selected. I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, and instead of tool creates shape, this is where I'm going to change it to tool creates mask. Now I'm going to draw the mask right on that edge, that top edge, so we can fully see it within this space. And now comes a little tricky part just for remembering. If you are used to going to transform and animating the position, well, this is what happens. Notice, if you can see it well enough, that the brown line that shows the mask, it is moving with the heart shape. So it's not actually doing the masking effect. So I'm going to leave it back here. You actually have to go to toggle down contents, shape 1, and then transform shape 1. And now there's another position setting. So this is where, as I adjust these settings here, the mask is not moving. It's only the position change of this path, the heart shape. So basically it's going to animate into doing that. So let's start it here. This will be the starting point. I'm going to turn on stopwatch for this position. And again, this is the position under transform shape 1, not the transform under the whole layer, which is shape layer 2. So we'll move this forward, and let's move it back down, approximately in the middle. So now let's see the animation. Here we go. I'll make it a little slower so that it's easier to see. So it's going from outside to inside, but we don't see it when it's on the outside. It's just revealing towards the center. Okay, so that's masking. There is another way if all else fails, because sometimes depending on how your layers are organized or the type of layers you're using, sometimes the masking, the way I just showed now, will not work, or it will not work properly the way you want it to. If this is not providing the results you want, you might have to look into creating an alpha or Luma track matte. I'm going to delete this border real quick. Let's see, we still got shape layer 2. Actually, I'm going to delete shape layer 2. Let's just start fresh again. In this case, I'm going to turn on, make a solid rectangle, or we'll just do a square. And I can make a new shape layer. We go to layer, new, shape layer. Let's use a pen tool. I'm just going to create like a giant triangle here. And with this layer 3, where it says track matte and no matte, I can click on this and select shape layer 2, which is that square that I just did. So you'll notice now that giant triangle only appears within the shape of that original square. You could do it backwards if you wanted to, where I can click a little button here, which is to invert the matte. So now that shape of that square is invisible as I move it around. Or you could do it the opposite way. I won't show it here, but you could, instead of the triangle only revealing itself within the area of the square, you could do it opposite, where it's the square only revealing itself in the shape of the triangle. So if the masking, the way I showed earlier, does not work, look into Alpha Luma track mattes. You can do it exactly how I did here. If you're going for something a little bit more complicated, you might have to go search for some specific tutorials about alpha mattes. Okay, so again, I'm going to delete these layers. Let's see what we want to look at next. Okay, I'm going to move these back down, and we're going to look at something like on the demo, these kind of flying sparks, these green lines. Now, there is a reason I'm showing those specifically. Okay, so we have the animation. kind of stabilizes. And now let's build this up. We're gonna go back to the pen tool. I'm just gonna make a line and click. You can actually hold down shift and it will snap the line into 90 degrees. So I got my line here. It's now shape layer 1. I can animate it. This is an example where I would use either mask or that alpha matte. That's what I did on this one, so that the sparks look like they're coming from behind it. In this case, there's actually a shortcut. Oh, I didn't realize I made this line on shape layer 1. So here's a good learning point. I must have had shape layer 1 selected. So when I made that line, it put a second path in here, which I don't want. So this is where I should have gone to layer, new, shape layer, and now make the line. And now it's shape layer 2. All right, so let's animate this. I'm not going to worry about putting on the mask. That'd be too time consuming. So I'm just going to do a very kind of simple animation. It starts here. This will be the turn on stopwatch for position. Move it forward. It'll go up. Move forward again. And it will go back down. Now, another little shortcut. So if I want to repeat this, let's say it's kind of bouncing up and down. I can actually copy and paste specific keyframes. So this keyframe is starting point, keyframe ending point. Now I can select these two. I'm just clicking in this empty area, clicking and dragging, so I select both keyframes. Command C or Control C to copy. Move the playhead further ahead, and then Command or Control V to paste. So it just pasted those keyframes again, and I can keep doing that. So now let's see what it looks like. Now it's going back and forth a lot. I'll do it even more. All right. So now if I select this layer, you can duplicate it by pressing Command or Control D. So now I have a new shape layer 3, and it duplicates it exactly as it was. So we only see one, but if I use my arrows, I move it over, no, I'm not sure why it disappeared there. Oh, I see. Okay, so even though I've done this a lot, there's always little things that pops up. And these are teaching moments. So what happened there was when I moved it, because I had a position animation turned on, when I moved it, it was actually trying to animate the move as well. So we're going to undo that. This is a good point to look at precomps. Precomps are for precompositions. To avoid this mistake, what just happened there, I need to right click or control click on this shape layer 2 and click on pre-compose. So when I do that, I can name it, let's just say I'll name it line 1 so that I know what it is. Press OK. And now it's changed. And it has a little symbol here that shows the pre-comp layer. Now, when I press Command D to duplicate this, and I move it over. I'm just using my arrow keys on my keyboard. Now it will work, and they're both in sync. I can duplicate that again. So I move it over here. Let's do it one more time all the way this point. And then one final time at this corner. All right, we'll play it. They're all going. Okay, but it's a little weird just having them all kind of in sync, going up and down together. I kind of want it to look like it's like a wave effect or something. Again, this is where, first off, I want to reorganize these, go from left to right, and then my layers from bottom to top. So right now I can just turn off and on. This bottom one is in the middle, so let me just move that up to the middle. That one. Yeah, okay, so the end ones are here. That should be at the top. So it goes there. Need to make that adjustment. There we go. This is where I'm going to stagger it a little bit, just like I did before. I'm just clicking, dragging these out. Trying to get even, so let's see it now. Okay, got a little funny motion there, but it's interesting. I'm for it. Okay, so now pre-comp layers, even though, yes, I just used it to solve that one issue that I had earlier, they are huge in After Effects. So I'm trying to think of other metaphors, again, especially for those of you who have experience in Illustrator or Photoshop. Imagine the necessity of building up lots and lots of layers to get a rich, detailed illustration, or say some sort of photo manipulation. You work with lots of layers. It's going to save yourself a lot of headache when you can basically nest these layers into pre-comps and then apply effects, move a bunch of things around at the same time. So what I mean by that, for example, so a pre-comp works just like in these other compositions. So above my layers, and I'm going to close out of these so it's easier to see. So I had this main composition, and I just clicked on it right here, and then the UAB logo, this demo, and these are two compositions here, like two tabs open on your browser. If I click on one of these line 1 pre-comps, it opens it up as just like any other composition. Now, all of these here that are these line 1 pre-comps, they are all linked to this pre-composition. So that means any changes that I do in this pre-comp will be applied automatically to all of these. So for example, let's say I want to change, we'll make this rounded actually. So if I go to shape layer, and I have to, I have to remember, oh yeah, okay. So if I toggle down contents and then shape 1 and then stroke, toggle down stroke, then the line cap, I can change it to a round cap. So now instead of it being flat, now they're rounded. So that change that I made, and this still shows the animation here. It's at this point, and I can still see these keyframes. So it's still doing its thing, but now it has these rounded caps. Well, when I go back to this UAB logo composition, it has been updated for all of them because they're all duplications of, or duplication, is that a word? Duplicates, I should say, of this line 1 precomp. Okay, there's another benefit. Let's say I want, it'll look weird, but let's say I want to rotate all of these bouncing lines to the side, the right side over here. I'm not sure why I would want to do that, but we're just going to look at it for the sake of this demo. So instead of messing up the position animation and manually trying to move and adjust all of these over on the right side, we can actually select these 5 pre-comp layers. And by the way, when the keyboard shortcut for that, and sometimes I forget to say it when I'm talking, I click on one, either the bottom or the top one, I hold down shift, and then I click on the other end. So if I click on the top, and I'm gonna hold down shift and click once on that bottom one, and it selects all 5. You can also click in an empty area and select these. Oh, actually, no, it doesn't work. Let's see. I'm just so used to the shift clicking. Well, anyway, I think you can also press, you can hold down command and click on each one individually, but it's just easiest to click on one, hold down shift, and click on the last one. Now they're all selected, or all these line 1 precomps are selected. So I can put these precomps into another precomp. So with them selected, I'm going to right click or control click, and then click on pre-compose again. And let's just say we're going to title it all lines, press OK, and now they're all in the all lines folder. Sorry, not folder. It kind of works like a folder, but it's the all lines precomp. Again, if I click on this, it opens up this composition tab, and I see all of the line 1s inside of it. So let me go back here, and in all lines, now I can toggle this down, go to transform, and I can rotate it, and you'll see it actually has a square that shows the whole composition. And then I can move it over, and just like that, instead of them bouncing above, now they're on the right side. So this is the way you do it. You don't want to have to move manually every single one of those shapes around and try to position them in the right spots and do all these rotations. That would take forever. Put things into precomps, and even put precomps inside precomps in order to make your life easier. This is a big part of After Effects, especially when you get more advanced. When you're doing basic stuff, it's no big deal. But as you get into more advanced things, precomps are going to be your best friend. Okay, well, I actually don't like it on the right side, so I'm going to move it back. And a couple more things before we wrap up. I know I've been talking a long time, but if you're still with me, if you go back to this example that I had here, there's a few more things that make this look a little bit more pleasing to the eyes than what I have so far in the demo today. First off, if I scrub through here, let's say, notice the A as it's coming down. You see how it's blurry compared to the U, which is stationary? It has motion blur on it. Same for the B, it has a motion blur, and then you're really going to notice it with the sparks. So you see how I'm just calling them sparks, but you see how if I turn off the motion blur, now there's sharp edges, sharp shapes. I don't like that look. So I'm going to turn them back on. Turning on motion blur makes things look a little bit more natural. As we see fast things go by, they look a little bit blurry. So this is matches more of our vision. It's a little unnatural to have these like perfectly sharp edges flying around on the screen. So I'm going to go back to my UAB logo here, and then all the layers that I have, there's a little icon here with the 3 overlapping circles. I'm just going to turn, that's the motion blur setting. I'm going to turn it on, click on these empty boxes, and then you have to make sure it's also enabled here, which it is. So if it's not enabled, they're still sharp. And when I click, I have them on for the individual layers, and then I'm going to enable it. And it did not work. So what's going on is because you still have to enable it inside the precomps. I did not do that. So if I double click on all lines, I have to enable them here as well. Well, guess what? It still did not work because these are in the line 1 precomps. Let me click on that and enable it here. And now we can see the motion blur. So if I go back here, now you see the little blurry edges. And now they look a little bit more natural as they're moving around. Okay, one more thing for motion, and then I'm going to show how to export as an animated GIF. Okay, one other thing that you'll notice in here is the motion, the way it's a little bit poppier, the way it kind of zooms around, the border zooms around, or the U flips quickly, or the A kind of pops down into place. Also the way the sparks kind of fly off the screen. There's another little effect that will make your animations much more polished and professional. And that is by editing the speed graph. Okay, this is getting a little bit more advanced, but it's very easy, I promise. So if I go back to my UAB logo, this demo, I'm going to do it for, actually, let me turn off the lines just so we can see clearly. The border that zooms around and the swinging UAB sign. Okay, so right now it's still kind of mechanical. I mean, we did add the easy ease, so that made it better. If it didn't have easy ease, it would be, horrible. Very mechanical, too evenly spaced motions and keyframe interpolation. But we can make it even a little bit more fun and exciting. So with this shape layer 1, I have it selected now. Next to where I just turned on the motion blur, there's another little icon right here. It's called, when I hover over it, it says the graph editor. So when I click on that, I get this kind of graph area. Right now it's blank. We need to see the keyframes. Now, there's a keyboard shortcut. I know this is a lot to remember, but if you just press U, or if you select a layer and then press U, it will show you the keyframes. Let me turn this off. Let me do that again so it's easier to see. So I have shape layer 1 selected. I'm pressing U once, and it automatically shows me the keyframes I have for this shape layer. If I did not use the keyboard shortcut U, I'd have to toggle down manually, and then toggle down contents, and then toggle down trim paths, and then see it. So that's a lot of extra clicking when I can just select it, press U, see the keyframes here. Then I have to select them. So let me select the keyframes, and now I'm going to click on the graph editor. When I do that, I see this parabola here that's basically showing what's called the speed graph. Now yours might not show this right away. You might have to come down here to this little menu option where it says choose graph type, and make sure it's not set to edit value or show reference. You need to have it selected on edit speed graph. And then yours will look like this. Again, I can select these two little squares here. They correspond with the keyframes. So I can click an empty area, click and drag and select these two. And I get these handlebars, these little yellow handlebars. So as I move them around, you'll see the speed graph is changing. This is a visual way to kind of get an idea of how the motion will appear. So in this case, it's going to start slow, speed up really quick, and then slow down. And that will make it look a little bit more like a pop of motion. So let's take a look. Let's emphasize it even more. I'm going to go crazy with it so that we can really see what it looks like. So it's very sharp. It's kind of, it'll start slow and then zoom around and then taper off. Yeah, do you see the difference there? It starts slow, zoom all the way around. So that might not be the type of motion you're looking for, but maybe it's something more like this where it starts slow and then ends abruptly. Actually, doesn't look too bad like that. Let's just try emphasizing this a little bit more. I'm going to drag it over so it happens a little quicker. Yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with the swinging UAB. So again, I click on that, press U, and I see all those keyframes there. Let me select them, go to my graph editor. And again, this is visually showing that kind of that motion, that back and forth swinging motion. So I'm going to click, select, click, drag and select. And then I'm going to move all these over. Now let's look at the difference. Okay, it's a little bit much, but it's kind of a funny, almost like Pixar style swinging. A little bit too extreme at the end. So I would get in there, and if you're having trouble, if things look a little too small, you'll notice this little small versus large mountains. This is where you can kind of zoom in. So I'm going to zoom in on these, and we're going to adjust these so it's not so sharp. This might look a little bit more natural. Not too bad. And then finally, we'll do it for the lines. We'll turn them back on. But we need to go back to the original line 1 pre-comp. I'm going to select the layer, press U. Here's all, and we haven't easy eased it yet. So this is actually interesting. If you, without easy ease, if you look at this kind of bouncing motion in the graph editor, I still have to select them. Sorry, give me a second. There we go. You don't have those smooth curves. It just looks like boxes. Okay, so this is why I'm going to select function F9 to easy ease. Now if I go back to the graph editor, now they look a lot smoother. We can represent it visually in the speed graph. And then I'm going to click and drag, whoops, there we go. Click and drag a selection over all of the keyframes, and let's drag out one handlebar and the next as well. Now see what this bouncing looks like. See how that looks very different, but it looks, quite honestly, it just looks a little bit more alive. Like it has some more personality. And just so it's not, the lines are not there the whole time, I'm gonna cut right here Remember that split layer? So I have all lines selected. Go up to Edit, Split Layer. Now I can delete this first part, so they're not there, and then they pop up. And look at that. They look almost like, like fleas or something, kind of like they've been brought to life. So that's by editing the speed graph, having motion blur turned on. I know this is not the greatest logo animation, but it's interesting to say the least. Okay, so next we want to make sure this loops. So these stop dancing right here. I can see this is 7 seconds and 11 frames. So I'm actually going to trim down the composition. Go to composition settings. Right now it was 9 seconds, so I'm going to manually type in here 7 and then 11. Press OK. So let's just see how it loops. It should go back to the beginning when it hits the end of the sequence. Yep, and then it's looping. Okay, so now we're ready to export as an animated GIF. First off, one more thing. I know we see this composition as a solid white background, but for the export, After Effects sees transparency. So it actually sees something like this. We do not want to export it transparent. You could, there's some applications where that might be helpful, but we want this solid white background. So we're going to come up to Layer, New, and then Solid. And I'm just keeping it white, press OK. I'm going to, right now it's on top of everything, that's why everything disappeared. I'm going to move it down to the bottom. So you can't see anything that happens, but again, if I toggle transparency, it's still white because I have that solid white layer there. Now it's ready to export. So for the animated GIF, I'm going to go to File, Export, and then you have to have this installed, but this comes with your UAB Creative Cloud account. I'm going to add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. I already had it opened, so a box pops up like this. It's the media encoder. And here's my UAB logo. I already had the format set to animated GIF, but if yours is not, it probably won't be defaulted to this, so you probably have to click on it. And this is where I'm going to change source range. It should be fine, but I'm just going to change this to entire composition. And then format animated GIF. Not to be confused, I believe there's somewhere else here. No, I don't see it. You may see a different GIF option, but just make sure you're choosing animated GIF. And press OK. And then you can change the output file. I'm going to put it in this folder for demo files. Just title UAB logo. Press save. And then you have to click on this little green play button, which just means start queue. And that will start the export process. So now it's exporting. I clicked on it. It's going through. It's only 7.5 seconds long, basically. So it's going to export pretty quick. Now when I go to Finder, let's look for that GIF. Here we go. And it should automatically be looping. And it is. And this is what you upload to the Canvas discussion by the end of Saturday night. All right, I know this was a long video. Thanks for sticking through all these different techniques. Please do email me if you have any questions.